It's interesting, historically, great-grandpa and grandpa farmed about 2 miles away, and it was on Cox's Creek. And the story was that in the quiet of the evening, they could talk to one another.
Oh, wow.
Down the creek. At least 2 miles away. Columbus, who spell their name B-A-R-N-D. No, I think it correctly, it's D-T.
Well, that's before Hitler took charge.
And when Dad went, you know, I'm going to tell this story with a few different details this afternoon. But Dad was illegitimate.
My namesake.
But he was raised by his mother and grandparents in Delhi. But there was no birth certificate. He wasn't counted on the census. It was after he was born, and he never went to school. At 9 years old, his grandmother and father took him to the orphanage. Can you imagine going at night and he used to say, the only father I had were the priests that used to come for daily mass. And of course, just a few months ago, Franciscans put out a financial report, and in it was a picture of the orphanage, but 10 years before Dad was there. And the custom was when they were 12, so I think the only school he had was at the orphanage. At 12, they were farmed out, which meant they went to live with a farmer, and at 16, they were paid for 4 years with a team and wagon so they could go to work and earn a living. Someplace, the records showed that when he went to the orphanage, he had his mother's name. But then later on, somehow it was changed to B-A-R-N-D, his father's name. And of course, he went to live in an Irish community between Strawberry and Volga. And the man was Mother's uncle. And he was treated poorly by this man. But somehow, in an Irish community, they didn't have any D's. And if you think about it, it's a little hard to hear if you're not accustomed to it. So that's the only way I think that his name got changed. And I don't think it ever was legally, except by custom.
Well, did I open a can of worms?
You should have heard all the stories we heard when we were kids. Because when you were in town in St. Joe's, you know, and we were all in school, and we'd all say, you know, Father's our cousin. He's my dad's first cousin. He's our cousin. You know, and they'd all say, well, how come his name isn't spelled like yours? And it's, well, Grandma Barn would tell us one story, and then we'd hear another story from Mom.
Well, what were some of the stories you heard? Go ahead.
Well, We heard that,
Real loud.
okay, first story I heard was that at some point I thought you were the one that was in the orphanage, and your name got changed. And then I figured, well, we figured out that wasn't right. And then we found out that, then there was a story that went around that said that your parents couldn't take care of your dad because they had too many other kids and they put him in an orphanage. That was, is that what you heard too, Dan?
That's kind of what I was thinking, but
Yeah, and we were thinking he was the youngest one, and that somebody died, like your mother died, wouldn't have been your mother, would have been your grandmother died, and they couldn't take care of him, so he went to an orphanage. I mean, we heard all kinds of different stories, everything except that he was illegitimate. And then the other story we heard is that when he came back to town, and he found out he had brothers, and that's, is that kind of what happened when he came back to Strawberry or Manchester? He found out he had some brothers, or half brothers, or?
Yeah, well, another story that I heard was that after his father was married, well, he was in an orphanage, but after the father was married, he looked too much like them.
Yeah, I heard that story too, I think. They found him in town or something, found out he was a brother. I don't know. But I guess we were in grade school, and nobody wanted to just tell us anything about anybody being illegitimate, so. Those were the years that was a big secret, so. So I don't think we ever got it straight until, I don't know, if we ever did get it straight, actually.
Well,
So.
and the story that Dad said about finding his family was that Mother's mother died in a mental hospital. And I'm guessing it was probably depression. And it was interesting because in all the years, I never heard how her mother raised their family, because there were 4 or 5 children, I think. And I never heard the story of, well, what happened after he died. But the story was that somehow Dad went to Alcater, the county seat, to settle the will, and the lawyer told him about this fella Jim, who was a plasterer, and that his brother, and that he went then to visit Dad and Mother and said, you know, this has to be my brother because we look so much alike.
Ancestry.com would have been confused with this one.
Yeah, that was our grandfather, Jim.
Right.
I did check the Mormon database when I was in Salt Lake City one time, and his name doesn't come up. Bring it up, his name's Strawberry Point, or Volga, or Clayton County. He doesn't record any birth.
Yeah. Well, when Dad turned 65, he had to go to the orphanage to get papers to prove he was 65. That's how we knew that he'd never been. And then when I retired, I went to Catholic Charities, and being a priest, I could get the record. And it was so interesting because his grandmother his grandmother always claimed that she was his mother. It's a little hard to believe when she has a daughter the same age as his father.